The night jolted when Maya Carter read the text and saw Ethan Reed waiting at her door. The narrator watched her grip the chain and breathe like she was counting seconds. Maya Carter said, "You don't get to do this again," Ethan Reed said. "I never stopped loving you." The hallway hummed with rain and broken promises. The narrator saw her careful life stacked on neat shelves behind her. Maya Carter said, "You have 2 minutes, then you go." Ethan Reed said, "2 minutes is all I need." The air felt thin, like a lie stretched too tight. The narrator felt old gravity pull them toward the same mistake. Maya Carter said, "Prove you changed or leave." Ethan Reed smiled like a memory and stepped inside. Morning crawled in with gray light and dishes in the sink. The narrator traced new footsteps across the clean rug. Maya Carter said, "You slept on the couch, and that is all this means." Ethan Reed said, "It means you let me in." Coffee steamed like a warning signal between them. The narrator felt old warmth try to bloom and then wither. Maya Carter said, "Boundaries keep both of us alive." Ethan Reed said, "Boundaries can move." The clock ticked like a judge. The narrator watched her stare at the door as if it could answer better than he could. Maya Carter said, "If you stay, you show proof." Ethan Reed nodded and smiled too fast. Work called, and the narrator rode with Maya Carter on a crowded bus that smelled like wet wool. A message from Ava Brooks buzzed with concern. Ava Brooks said, "Is he really back?" Maya Carter typed in erase, then typed again. Maya Carter said, "It is temporary." The narrator saw her reflection in the window look like a stranger. Ethan Reed said, "Dinner tonight, to talk." The words landed like a bet she could not afford. The narrator watched her press mute on hope. Maya Carter said, "Maybe." The city blurred past like a warning sign she could not read fast enough. At lunch, the narrator followed Maya Carter into a quiet park where benches dripped. Ava Brooks met her under a maple and eyed the sky. Ava Brooks said, "Say you want fall again." Maya Carter said, "People can change." The wind moved the wet leaves like coins. Ava Brooks said, "He breaks what he touches." The narrator felt the truth sting, then soften. Maya Carter said, "I need proof, not speeches." Ava Brooks said, "Proof is scar tissue." A siren wailed thin and far. The narrator watched resolve settle on her face like rain drying. Evening came fast, and the narrator set the table with 2 plates that felt like 4. Ethan Reed arrived clean and bright, flowers like an apology. Ethan Reed said, "New job, new sponsor, new rules." Maya Carter said, "Words are light, proof is heavy." The food cooled while the past warmed. Ethan Reed said, "I missed your laugh." The narrator watched her swallow the sound. Maya Carter said, "Eat, then leave." Ethan Reed said, "Let me try." The narrator felt the house lean toward a choice neither wanted to name. Days blurred into a rhythm neither trusted. The narrator watched Maya Carter wipe down the same counter twice before Ethan Reed came home late again. Maya Carter said, "Work ends at 6, not midnight." Ethan Reed said, "It's overtime, you know that." The lie sat heavy. The narrator felt her shoulders tighten as silence grew. The clock ticked like an accusation. Maya Carter said, "You promised this would be different." Ethan Reed said, "I'm trying." The narrator saw her nod, but her eyes drifted toward the old scars only she could feel. Outside, rain returned, soft and relentless, echoing the way regret never fully left them. The narrator followed them to a quiet restaurant where the light was too soft to be honest. Maya Carter said, "This was our first date spot." Ethan Reed said, "Maybe it can be a new start." The waiter smiled, sensing tension under calm faces. The narrator saw her fork scrape untouched food. Ethan Reed said, "You don't trust me." Maya Carter said, "Trust is earned in small doses." The laughter from another table sounded cruel in its ease. The narrator felt the weight of years pressed between them like a ghost refusing to leave. Outside, headlights washed the window, and her reflection looked like someone rehearsing forgiveness. Later that night, the narrator caught Maya Carter pacing the living room while Ethan Reed slept on the couch. The phone glowed with a message from Ava Brooks. Ava Brooks said, "He's slipping again, isn't he?" Maya Carter typed, then deleted the truth. The narrator felt her chest tighten as she stared at the man who once taught her how to hope and how to bleed. Maya Carter said, "Maybe I'm the fool this time." Silence answered. The rain on glass beat like a slow confession. The narrator knew she was building a life on an echo, one heartbeat away from breaking again. Saturday morning sunlight tried to paint warmth over the cracks. The narrator watched Ethan Reed cook pancakes, humming like old times. Maya Carter said, "You're acting normal." Ethan Reed said, "Isn't that good?" The sweetness smelled like denial. The narrator caught her smile flicker before fading. Maya Carter said, "Normal doesn't erase what happened." Ethan Reed said, "Then what does?" The spatula clanged like a gavel. The narrator saw her turn away to hide tears that refused to fall. Outside, children laughed, unaware that inside, love was being rebuilt on wet sand. That evening, the narrator followed them to a small art gallery. The walls shimmered with color and silence. Ethan Reed said, "This one reminds me of us." The painting was fractured glass, beautiful but broken. Maya Carter said, "It should." The narrator saw her eyes linger too long on the cracks. A stranger, Noah Ellis, paused beside her and said, "Some art only survives because it was broken first." Ethan Reed frowned, sensing something he couldn't name. The narrator felt the air shift as her mind did the same. The night ended with polite smiles, but the space between them had started to widen again. Weeks passed, and the narrator saw Maya Carter trying to believe what her heart already doubted. The morning light revealed quiet distance where closeness once lived. Maya Carter said, "You've been drinking again." Ethan Reed said, "Just one, it doesn't count." The words landed like ash. The narrator felt the chill between them deepen. Maya Carter said, "You made promises, Ethan." Ethan Reed said, "I'm doing my best." The smell of whiskey betrayed him. The narrator watched her retreat behind politeness, her silence sharper than anger. Outside, wind rattled the window, whispering of storms still coming. She folded her arms, building walls no apology could cross. The narrator followed Ethan Reed to a crowded bar where laughter hid loneliness. He stared into his drink, convincing himself he was fine. Noah Ellis appeared beside him, calm and steady. Noah Ellis said, "You can't fix pain by drowning it." Ethan Reed said, "You don't know my pain." The narrator saw him grip the glass too tight, anger trembling beneath charm. Noah Ellis said, "She deserves peace." Ethan Reed's silence was louder than music. The narrator felt him crumble behind his smirk, every sip undoing his promises. The night blurred, the bar fading into a mirror of regret he refused to face. Later that night, the narrator saw Maya Carter waiting by the window. Rain tapped soft and steady. Ava Brooks entered without knocking, worry etched deep. Ava Brooks said, "You deserve better than this cycle." Maya Carter said, "I keep thinking he'll wake up different." The narrator saw the quiet war in her eyes, love fighting reason. Ava Brooks said, "He won't change until you stop saving him." Maya Carter said, "Letting go feels like failure." The narrator felt the weight of years in her voice. Outside, thunder rolled like an answer, heavy and final. The night smelled like endings. Morning came heavy, the narrator tracing silence between them like cracks on glass. Ethan Reed said, "You've been talking to Ava again." Maya Carter said, "She listens." His voice rose, soft but sharp. Ethan Reed said, "She wants us apart." Maya Carter said, "She wants me safe." The narrator felt the air tighten, love shifting into fear. Ethan Reed slammed a door and the echo hurt more than words. Maya Carter sat at the table, shaking hands hiding under folded arms. The narrator saw her finally see him clearly, not as the man she loved, but as the storm she survived. The narrator found Maya Carter at her mother's small house by evening. Mother Laura Carter opened the door, worry mixed with relief. Mother Laura Carter said, "You look tired." Maya Carter said, "I finally left." The narrator felt the air shift from sorrow to fragile peace. Mother Laura Carter said, "You did the right thing." Maya Carter said, "Then why does it hurt this much?" Silence wrapped them gently. The narrator saw strength being rebuilt quietly, one breath at a time. Outside, dusk painted the yard gold, the first calm after the storm. Change had begun, soft but certain. The narrator followed Maya Carter as she walked through the quiet morning streets. She clutched her phone, reading the message Ethan Reed had sent. "Please meet me." Her heart beat unevenly. Maya Carter said, "This will be the last time." The narrator saw the sun caught in thin clouds, like hope straining through regret. At the cafe, Ethan Reed waited, eyes hollow but pleading. Ethan Reed said, "I need to explain." Maya Carter said, "Words don't fix what actions destroy." The narrator felt her voice steady, shaped by pain and clarity. Ethan Reed said, "I was scared to lose you." Maya Carter said, "You already did." The coffee cooled between them, silent witness to everything broken. The narrator found Ethan Reed later in the same cafe, alone after Maya Carter left. He stared at her empty chair as if it still held her voice. The barista wiped tables quietly, avoiding his eyes. Noah Ellis entered and sat across from him. Noah Ellis said, "You have to stop chasing her pain." Ethan Reed said, "She's all I had." The narrator felt the truth wrap around him like smoke. Noah Ellis said, "You need to face yourself, not her." Ethan Reed said, "I don't know who that is anymore." The narrator watched him crumble inward, finally realizing that losing her was not the wound. It was the mirror. The narrator followed Maya Carter as she visited Daniel Price's small office. She needed clarity more than comfort. Daniel Price said, "You can't carry someone else's recovery." Maya Carter said, "I thought love was enough." Daniel Price said, "Love without boundaries burns everything." The narrator saw her eyes soften, like glass finally cooling. Daniel Price said, "You're not leaving him, you're returning to yourself." Maya Carter nodded, the weight in her shoulders lifting slightly. The narrator felt her strength rising again, quiet but certain. She said, "Then I choose peace." Outside, sunlight broke through clouds, sharp and honest. Evening shadows stretched long as the narrator followed Ethan Reed to Maya Carter's building. He stood outside, clutching a letter. The narrator felt tension coil in the air. Maya Carter appeared at the door, startled but steady. Ethan Reed said, "I came to return what's yours." He handed her the letter unopened. Maya Carter said, "I don't need it." Ethan Reed said, "Then maybe I do." He looked smaller under the streetlight. The narrator felt finality settle over them like quiet snow. Maya Carter said, "Goodbye, Ethan." He nodded, unable to meet her eyes. The letter slipped from his fingers, carried by the wind. The narrator watched Maya Carter drive out of the city the next morning. The world outside her window looked new, washed by night rain. Mother Laura Carter called and said, "You sound lighter." Maya Carter said, "Maybe this is what peace feels like." The narrator felt the quiet between her words bloom into something alive. Birds crossed the sky, their movement easy and sure. Maya Carter said, "I loved him once, but I love freedom more." The road curved into sunlight, and the city disappeared behind her. The narrator knew the hardest chapter had ended. Healing had begun, soft and steady as dawn. The narrator watched Maya Carter return to her small apartment, sunlight spilling across the floor like forgiveness. The silence felt different now, gentle instead of hollow. Ava Brooks arrived with 2 coffees. Ava Brooks said, "You finally look rested." Maya Carter said, "Maybe peace is just space to breathe." The narrator sensed warmth between them, fragile yet real. They talked about plans, not problems. Ava Brooks said, "Hell fade like a storm after rain." Maya Carter smiled faintly. Let him. The city outside buzzed, but her heart no longer rushed to match it. Healing wasn't loud, it was quiet, steady, and hers. The narrator followed Ethan Reed through the quiet park where they once met. Leaves crunched beneath his shoes. He sat on a bench and unfolded the letter he had never sent. Ethan Reed said, "I should have let her heal sooner." His voice trembled, fading into the wind. A child's laughter echoed nearby, reminding him of life moving on. The narrator saw guilt loosen its grip, replaced by weary understanding. Ethan Reed whispered, "Maybe this is what growing up feels like, learning when to stop breaking things." He folded the letter again. No tears, just truth. The past didn't vanish, but it softened. The narrator saw Maya Carter meet Mother Laura Carter for lunch at their favorite diner. The smell of coffee and pie filled the air. Mother Laura Carter said, "You've grown stronger than you realize." Maya Carter said, "It took breaking to find balance." The narrator noticed her laugh. Real and free this time. Mother Laura Carter said, "He taught you what not to settle for." Maya Carter said, "And what I truly deserve." Their hands met across the table, the past resting quietly between them. The narrator felt gratitude bloom like spring inside her chest, simple and bright. The narrator watched Ethan Reed visit Daniel Price again. Papers were scattered across the desk. Daniel Price said, "You've been sober for 3 weeks. That's something," Ethan Reed said. "It's harder to face the quiet than the noise." Daniel Price said, "That's where real change begins." The narrator noticed how his hands no longer shook. Ethan Reed said, "I hurt her, but I'm learning not to repeat it." Daniel Price smiled faintly. "Then you're finally listening." The narrator felt a small pulse of redemption stirring. Not forgiveness, but the start of accountability. The narrator ended with Maya Carter standing on the beach at sunset. The horizon burned gold and rose. She closed her eyes, listening to the waves whisper forgiveness. Ava Brooks joined her, barefoot in the sand. Ava Brooks said, "You did it. You let go." Maya Carter said, "Yes, and it didn't break me." The narrator felt peace settle like the tide, slow and final. Behind her, the ocean erased footprints as if the past had been returned to the sea. The wind lifted her hair, carrying away what no longer belonged. Freedom was quiet, but she could finally hear it. The narrator watched the evening settle over the city like a soft bruise. Maya Carter stood outside Daniel Price's office, hesitant but calm. Ethan Reed was already inside, eyes fixed on the floor. Daniel Price said, "You both agreed to talk? Let's begin." Maya Carter said, "I don't hate you, Ethan. I just can't return," Ethan Reed said. "I never wanted to lose you." The narrator felt truth hang heavy in the air, raw and unguarded. Maya Carter said, "You lost me when I stopped losing myself." Silence lingered. Daniel Price nodded. Letting the weight of their words do the healing, neither could speak aloud. The narrator followed Ethan Reed after the session. He walked through the narrow street alone. Streetlights flickered, echoing his exhaustion. He stopped at a record shop window, displaying a song they once danced to. Ethan Reed said, "Some songs don't belong to you anymore." His reflection stared back, older, quieter. The narrator felt resignation mixing with strange peace. He didn't chase memories now. He simply faced them. The wind carried laughter from nearby strangers, life continuing without permission. Ethan Reed smiled faintly, the first honest smile in months. Acceptance, though bitter, finally felt clean. The narrator turned to Maya Carter, now at Ava Brooks' apartment for dinner. The table glowed under soft candles. Ava Brooks said, "It feels like you've been gone for years." Maya Carter said, "I was, but I'm back." They shared quiet laughter, the kind that doesn't need sound. The narrator felt how love could survive through friendship, not romance. Ava Brooks said, "You're allowed to be happy again." Maya Carter smiled. "I'm starting to believe that." Outside, the city hummed in rhythm with new beginnings. Healing had finally found a voice that sounded like laughter. The narrator followed Mother Laura Carter, visiting Maya Carter's apartment for tea. The air smelled of lemon and calm. Mother Laura Carter said, "You've changed." Maya Carter said, "I finally stopped waiting for someone else to love me right." The narrator saw pride glimmer in her mother's eyes. Mother Laura Carter said, "You remind me of myself when I finally left your father." Maya Carter said, "Then maybe this is our family's real inheritance, learning to leave pain behind." They laughed softly, the sound warm and full. The narrator felt generations healing quietly in a single moment. The narrator closed on Ethan Reed standing by the ocean cliffs at dawn. Mist rolled across the horizon. He opened his journal, writing only one line, "Thank you for leaving." The narrator felt how loss had become teacher, not tormentor. Maya Carter walked along the same beach miles away, unaware yet connected by memory. She breathed deeply, light on her face. Ethan Reed whispered, "Be happy, Maya." The tide rose, washing away footprints again. Both lives moved forward separately. The past had finally loosened its hold. Regret became gratitude, and silence became mercy. The narrator opened on a quiet morning filled with promise. Maya Carter sat at her desk, typing the last line of her journal. Some endings are beginnings in disguise. Sunlight traced soft lines across her face. The room felt peaceful. Ava Brooks knocked on the door and entered with breakfast. Ava Brooks said, "You sound like someone who finally forgave the past." Maya Carter said, "Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for me." The narrator saw the relief in her smile, unforced and calm. The scent of coffee and toast mixed with the warmth of new purpose. For the first time, her story belonged only to her. The narrator found Ethan Reed in a bookstore later that day, browsing the self-help section. His hands moved slowly along the spines of titles about rebuilding. A clerk asked if he needed help. Ethan Reed said, "No, I think I finally know where to start." The narrator noticed how his posture had changed, less tense, more grounded. He bought a small notebook and left with quiet conviction. Outside, the city sounded alive again. He didn't look back once. The narrator sensed that he had stopped chasing ghosts and started choosing growth. The world, once suffocating, now felt like open air. The narrator followed Maya Carter and Mother Laura Carter to a lakeside retreat. The water shimmered under clear skies. Mother Laura Carter said, "You've come a long way." Maya Carter said, "So have we." The narrator saw how their laughter carried over the rippling water, unburdened and true. Mother Laura Carter said, "Healing runs in the family now." Maya Carter said, "Then maybe we're finally free." The breeze lifted her hair as if nature itself exhaled relief. The narrator felt time stretch gently, the past distant but not erased, just quiet. resting where it could do no more harm. The narrator showed Ethan Reed visiting Daniel Price's office one final time. They spoke less and listened more. Daniel Price said, "You've changed, Ethan. Don't forget how hard that was." Ethan Reed said, "I'm learning to stay still." The narrator felt pride stir quietly in Daniel Price's eyes. Ethan Reed said, "I won't undo her peace." "That's my closure." Daniel Price nodded, writing something in his notes before closing the file. The sound of the pen snapping shut felt like the end of a long chapter. Outside, daylight broke through the blinds like soft applause. The narrator ended with Maya Carter walking through the same park where everything began. The leaves glowed gold in afternoon light. She paused under the old oak tree and smiled, remembering the girl she once was. Ava Brooks joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. Ava Brooks said, "You made it," Maya Carter said. "No, I'm just finally living." The narrator felt peace radiate around her, a quiet harmony between pain and growth. The world no longer felt cruel. It felt earned. As the wind stirred the branches above, the past whispered one last time and then fell silent for good.